Give it a sec. All right, ladies, we are live.
Welcome back, everybody. In case you missed last week, it is now live wherever you listen to your podcast. So please go listen to that after you're done joining us here. And if you're here live and you're asking some questions on YouTube along the way, please feel free to do that. And we will have Missy ask the question for us so we can see what we have about it. So Bethany, Missy, I gave y'all some homework last week. Do you remember what it was? And did you do it? No judgment if you didn't. So for those of you who missed it, I asked them to put a mark on their hand or some reminder. So you see I have one fingernail painted a different color so that it reminds me to sort of pause and recalibrate and do whatever my current micro habit practice is for the week. So last week we were talking about whether or not other people drain you, right? Whether or not you feel drained at any given moment during the day. So did you guys play with that? Did you practice it? What happened?
So I did a little bit. And I thought it was interesting. I breathed a lot. There was a lot of breathing. A lot of deep, deep breathing. So in addition to me bringing my family member to particular appointments, my husband actually called me on his way. He was actually at work and he was like, "Hey, I'm on my way to urgent care. There was something going on with his foot," and he's a mailman, so it was problematic. He couldn't even lift it. So having that kind of throw a monkey wrench into the weekly plans and knowing that I already had other stuff going on, in addition to operating my business, like I own a business. I am the business in addition to my team members, but also directing my team members. So he can't drive currently because of this situation. It's a spinal situation, come to find out. So he has to see a specialist, and all of these things are happening. And he is. I never realized how dependent I am on my husband to do all of the things until he cannot do all of the things.
That's good noticing.
It's good noticing. So I would look at my finger and deep breathe, and to the point where he was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yep, just breathing, just breathing."
Can I pause you for a second though? When you got that message from him, I'm headed to urgent care. What happened in your body? Did you tense up? Did you notice yourself
Yes, because this man does not go to the doctor. He will just it's uncanny to me. He will just champion on. He's not really a complainer. So for him to send me a message that not only was he going to urgent care, but his boss was driving him to urgent care, something was amiss, something was afoul. And immediately I was like, what is happening? And why is it happening? Come on, January. And we decided to do dry January. So I'm like, for real now? This can't be happening in a couple of weeks where we can just have some wine and chill. So yeah, there was a very an immediate worry of why are you going to urgent care? What is happening? And then an immediate frustration because he was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to," after he got through meeting with the doctor, he was like, "Well, I'm just going to walk home." And I'm like, "Sir, can you just be," because I had meetings. And I was like, can you just wait for me and I will pick you up." A lot of breathing.
So I'm guessing you noticed a fair number of moments of feeling drained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the word of the day. The word of the week is drained. Do you guys remember Pee-wee's Playhouse when they would have the word of the day and they were all of a sudden Cherry would be like, "Nah!" That's the word of the week is drained. We're in Pee Wee Playhouse with Leah now.
Fascinating. Sorry you had to go through all of that.
But as we discussed last week, and the topic of last week, the embodiment of showing up, like I showed up. Like I did all of my clients' work, including yours that you got very late. I had all of my meetings. I did all of the things that I had to do. Everybody, like I did not drop or miss one deadline, and we're here tonight. So
Even for yourself, like, did you eat and sleep and whatever your usual self-care routines are? Did those go by the wayside?
well, I can live off the fat of the land for like a good 3 months without without me even noticing. So, but yeah, I got some nutrients in. I didn't drink as much water as I have been drinking since dry January. Um, so I've noticed that I was like a little parched, but nothing.
All in all, that sounds good. How about you, Misty? How'd you do?
So I don't really have a lot of interaction with a lot of people because I work from home and I have my groceries delivered and I'm basically turning into a hermit over here. So I realized that there's really not a lot of things that drain me, but I realized that sometimes the dogs drain me. So I was looking at that and trying to think about like how, especially since I injured my foot last week and I've been on limited walkie time, it's just been everyone's been a little crazy around here. So I've been trying to not lose my patience with them when they're like, as you may see behind me.
I did. I saw him walking in. Like, you talking about me?
He's like, why are you going to talk about me? At least let me come in the room. So, but yeah, I've noticed that I start to feel a little bit, maybe not drained, but like exasperated with them. And I kind of stop myself, take a few deep breaths and reframe the situation so that I realize that it's not just me looking at the dogs being upset. It's them, being cooped up in the house for a few days or whatever the case, and makes me feel better about it. And then I don't feel exasperated anymore.
Are you willing to say what exasperated feels like in your body? Like, is there a moment just today or yesterday? Yeah.
Yeah. It's sweaty hands, which is always, although I have a funny story about nausea and not having sweaty hands the other day, but sweaty hands, and just kind of this like let down feeling, like kind of a sinking, like, ugh, kind of feeling.
So, Missy, I have a question for you. Because dogs are really like receptive, do you feel like when you're exasperated that your dogs emote exasperation as well, or that they can sense, or they feel like that they've done something wrong, or they can sense that you're exasperated?
Absolutely. My shepherd, he is like super responsive to every feeling that I have, and he feels it with me. And so I can feel him. Just when I relax, I can see him relax as well. And like when I got hurt the other day, they were both like, what's happening? What's going on? What's like, whenever I don't feel well, they come in the bed and like get extra close. I mean, normally they're close, but they get extra close and they want to be close to me so that they can make me feel better. Or at least that's what I think they're doing. That's my story.
Fascinating. It's interesting because you're actually both pointing to, right, this is the math of the emotions of like, and Bethany, you just pointed out one of the most important, I think, aspects of it, which is that it's contagious, right? And you're talking about the dogs, but people are animals too. We pick up on things the same way other animals do. And so we may not notice the tiny nuance of like our body tightening up, but our dogs definitely do. And I bet our husbands kind of do too, right? It's like they, and they may not even pick up that it's like a tone in your voice, right? Or are you fucking kidding me? How come we can't have at least a glass of wine right now? Whatever, but those
It's so
tiny little
true
things.
because I am very regimented. Like I have a routine, and with the introduction of me going to outside appointments for a family member, I've had to curtail my routine, and I just became acclimated to that routine because it happens weekly, and I'm like, okay, this is where I need to be, this is what I need to do. So with him being hurt, like seriously hurt, in addition to the concern that I have and the worry that I have, he's fucked up my routine. Like he's in the morning and he's like lollygagging, and I'm like, I, so he's very like, I know I messed up your routine. I'm sorry. And I'm like, no, it's fine. I love you. I want you to be better. Which I do. Which I do. I do all of those things.
It's such a funny thing because so you recognize then that the worry itself doesn't help him, it doesn't help you. And if anything, it adds to the number of things you have to deal with in the day's time. Right. And you already need to be like on, right. Especially I had something not like that, not exactly the same thing, but my husband had a thing about a little over a year ago where he was totally out of commission. And suddenly I had to do all the things plus take care of him. Which I imagine is kind of the situation that you're in. And the exasperation about it, or the fatigue, or the whatever shows up, right? It just like makes it even harder to do, because then you're also like, I wish I didn't have to do all this shit. And that just makes it even harder to kind of get through the days. Yeah. And you're already taking care of another family member. Right. Yeah. Do you have a clue what the cost of that is? Like, I know you said you still did all the things, and I know you said you can live off the fat of the land for a while, but if this is where, right? Like when people talk about burnout, it's because they've been attempting 3 days a week to live off the fat of the land for the past 3 years or whatever it is. But do you know though, like, that feeling of disruption, right? There's the actual disruption, right? And I don't know if you can calculate the time of what, right? Because, right, there's the actual time of now I have to, I don't know, carry him up and down the stairs. I'm not really sure what you're doing here.
No, he's literally a foot taller than me, so that would be like I would harm her more. He can walk; it's just very limited mobility.
Mhm.
And we have a split ranch, so the majority of our things are upstairs where he is in the split ranch. Like he brought his PlayStation up into the living room so that he wouldn't have to like hobble down the stairs. So
Priorities.
yeah, priorities. Yeah, so there's no like dragging him around and like on a blanket. Like
I was thinking about this though as an intro to like, this is the right, because there's the math of the shit we actually have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And then especially when there's more chaos, all the extra shit we have to deal with, right? And normally most of us have pretty full lives and don't have a lot of extra space kind of, just laying around 4 hours to just like lounge, right? I don't know about you, but running a business is often not like that. But there's the actual technical stuff that has to be taken care of. I don't know if you're having to make food for him and he normally makes food, or right, like all of the different things. There's the time of that. And then there's the cost of like that tiredness about it. And at the end of the day, like the feeling of like wanting a drink. I mean, I actually think a lot of our proclivities are, sometimes they're addictions, but sometimes they're just like, how do I unwind? And like a lot of those things are actually partially because we've been accumulating. I sometimes think about it as like when you wake up in the morning, maybe you're kind of have a baseline, right? And then throughout the day, there's like, oh, that shit just hit the fan, right? And you said you did a lot of breathing. And I don't know if you were doing the kind of breathing that was like, or if it was the kind of breathing that actually kind of got you closer back to that baseline. Do you know actually? Maybe you can.
It was definitely like breathing in through my nose and like rounding my stomach, and then exhaling, like flattening my stomach. Like it was a very trying to bring my stress level and body to a manageable point, because I could feel myself just getting ready excuse me, getting ready to have either a panic attack or like overload on anxiety. And I was like, I math of emotions, I literally didn't have time for that. Like
Right.
when you say I ain't got time for that, so my body was like, I need to reprogram
Yeah.
in
That's
order to
well,
get through all of this. Right, like right now. Not, and I'm not even talking about like 30 minutes from now, like this literal moment. I need to just
so
decrease
good.
what's happening.
This is perfect. This is exactly right. This is the math of the emotions. And in as much as oftentimes we do it when there is a lot of chaos, right? Because we have to. And in that moment, but then what happens is we're almost doing it. And it's kind of a stretch for us to do it, that we collapse afterwards, right? Like, I don't know if you're already like, look, when you feel better, I'm taking a vacation. Because it can feel like that, right? So this is how come, well, the work that we do, we're practicing it all. Like, can I practice it all day, every day, so that when there is a disruption in the in the force field, so to speak, right, that we actually have some place that we know of as like it's in our back pocket, right? We know it's like home, so that we're not like efforting, right? Because that breath also, if you're using the breath to like try to come back, I don't know if you ever have done this, but like you're starting to feel kind of panicky and you're starting to use your breath. And the next thing you know, your breath is just like another additional panic problem. You're like
Bre-
working too hard at the breathing part.
and you hyperventilate and then you pass out when you're driving. And then you
Hopefully
got a
not
whole other
that.
problem because you need a new car because you crashed.
Seriously, actually, you know what? Accidents are oftentimes the result of us not being fully present, not paying attention, partially because we are feeling that kind of distractedness of, oh, I gotta go da 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 da. And so we're not actually paying attention to this other thing over here, which, leads us into our topic for today. Thanks, Bethany, for the setup.
That's what I do.
So we're going to talk today a little bit more about the math of emotions. What does it cost us, not just financially, but what does it cost us in our relationships? What does it cost us in our businesses? What does it cost us in actually being fully present to the moments in our lives, which is what I imagine most of us do want, is to not miss what's actually happening in our lives while we're doing it. So I'm going to give you a little story that kind of popped up last week after our call last week. We were talking and I was saying how I have always had this little tendency, right? We were talking about things that we avoid or procrastinate on or whatever. And this little tendency to avoid anything that looks or feels or smells like bureaucracy. And so I quit high school about halfway through my senior year. Because I was going to either have to take differential equations to get out of, I was going to have to take differential equations to get out of high school. And it didn't make sense to me because I had lots of friends who were struggling just to get through algebra 2 or whatever it was to get out of high school. So I was going to offer a math course that would help them understand math better and support them. It didn't get approved by the math department. They thought that it wouldn't contain enough actual math for me to do, I guess, to count as a whole credit. So anyway, I decided that was BS and I didn't want to do it. And I didn't really need another math credit anyway. I had learned what I came there to learn. And so I quit high school and I left. Long story short, I decided, do you want to go to college? I enroll in college and I also go to a college that allows me to not have to take those first year. I actually take 24 college credits in an adult continuing education program before I enroll full time so that I can jump over those like year 1 English and math and all the rest of these things. So, I mean, I like keep thinking I can step over the bureaucracy of what it is to live in the United States of America and go through these, jump through these hoops. But essentially, I decided I want to be an acupuncturist and I need to get my master's degree. And in order to finish my college degree, I end up about 8 months pregnant with my second child, sitting in one of those chairs that's attached to the desk. So I keep sliding in. I have to hold myself away from the desk to keep my big baby belly from bumping into the seat. Taking taking my college calculus again, just to get through, and realizing that as much as I try to avoid something, in the end, I'm going to probably have to do it and just do it. Luckily, the math teacher was very nice and could see that I actually remembered, luckily, a lot of calculus. And I told me eventually that I could just show up for the tests. So a little win, but the cost of that, right, was that I don't know if there's an actual cost in that, but the cost of me thinking I could avoid it, right? And that tendency of thinking that I can avoid it and the sort of resistance to doing it is something that I think has cost me a lot over the years. Definitely got into it over my taxes a couple of times in a similar vein.
But I love this story because I think it is such a great demonstration of if you had just done it and got it over with, it wouldn't have plagued your life for literal years, which is kind of what it did in a sense. It kept
Maybe,
haunting you.
maybe. I mean, I don't remember thinking about it very often because I left high school and had one of the most transformative experiences of my life in the next 6 months, which if they had said I could have that college credit, I might not have done, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If they had said I could get that last math credit by doing this other thing, although it was basically Common Core, which they all do now, right? I would have piloted Common Core in 1995.
Which you're so freaking brilliant. I can't even stand you. Like who's just like, well, I'm going to create a curriculum for my friends and teach them because they're having problems. And then they were like, no, that's not good enough, and you can't graduate from high school because you don't want to take this. Like it's very bizarre, but I
It is
digress.
bizarre. Well, I mean, I think industrial schooling is bizarre at large, right? So there's also that. Yeah. But it's kind of an example. I mean, I think when I think of the math of emotions these days, I think of a whole bunch of other things about not just things that we avoid, because I actually think the math of emotions, when I think about it now, is usually more like I get an email, right? Say I get a client who's pissed about something and they send me an email and I get it at like 2 p.m. and I feel it in my gut and I think, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. And then maybe I sit on it and then maybe I'm even scared to like tell my team about it or tell Missy about it or whatever it is. Or I tell Missy about it and then I infect her, right? And then I am frustrated, then she's frustrated too, right? Then however many, and then we wait 3 or 4 days. Well, meanwhile, the client's more and more mad because I haven't responded because I just wanted to bite their head off or whatever it is. That's actually what I think. And I think about the accumulation of that. And like, Misty goes and then the next thing you know, she's tense and Maximus gets tense. And the next thing you know, the neighbor gets bit. And no, seriously, this is how shit happens though, right? I think about this every time there was a mass shooting. I mean, there are all kinds of mass shootings. We live in the United States of America. So here we are. But every time I hear about one, I think, what happened to that person and where was who had the potential to interrupt the cascade that person became that person. And so that's what I think about, right? Every time like I feel antsy with a cashier somewhere, right? And it's like, it's the reminder for me to go, the only person who can interrupt the cascade of trauma actually is the one person who has the capacity to transform their emotions in that moment.
So when Jade shares with you a an interaction that she had with a client, do you then mirror back what you hear Jade saying, or do you look at the email itself and provide your interpretation?
Okay, so we kind of have the same brain now. So even if I read the email and have my own interpretation, it's going to be along the same lines of what her interpretation is. If she's upset about something, I'm usually going to be upset about something. And sometimes I'm upset about something when she's not upset about something. Like I take things a little bit more personally, I think, than she does, but that's just the difference in our personalities. But yes, we've kind of developed a very similar, I don't know, there's a lot of things that we do that we'll text each other about the same thing at exactly the same time. And it's just, we've been friends for a very long time since she quit high school.
Yeah, basically.
So do you
Before
think that
that.
it's important? It's funny because Cheryline is like my person. So if there is a situation that has happened within the body of the business, and for those who don't know, Cheryline is my graphic designer, but she's been with me for literally years. If there's something that happens that she didn't see, I will contact her and I'll be like the Tasmanian devil. Blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, did you see? And she'll be like, okay, well, let's take a beat and let's talk, like, what was this about? Like, how did this happen? And so she's kind of my Jiminy Cricket, or like my voice of reason when I'm like, and because I know who I am, so I need to freak out, and then I need to come up with, and then I need to calm down, and then I need to come up with a plan, and then I need to get all of my receipts to respond to the email. And then I get to the pursuant to blah, 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 and then I get very legal.
So our problem is I'll go down the hole with her.
And that's like, is there a person that interrupts that?
No, we both do. We're both, and this is why everybody who works with us goes through our program, because that's actually the culture of interrupting it and going, wait, okay, what are you forgetting? Like, are you right? How's your body right now? Right. I think I probably interrupt Missy a fair amount with that, although she does it a lot less than she has a lot less upset than she used to. Is that right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I'll still interrupt and go, okay, like, let's breathe. If I catch myself, I'll do it, but I'm also counting on my team, right, to go, wait a second, take a breath here. What's the phenomena, right? People will like, so we have all these tiny little skills that we practice all the time to interrupt that cycle. Like, I rarely get an email that I feel that way about. When was the last time I got an email that I felt that way about?
I don't know of any that
it doesn't actually happen. That it was so Bethany, I think the problem is what you're seeing is, I think the result of like us taking our own medicine is that we don't have a lot of this in our business. We really don't. I don't think we have a lot of upset or a lot of even miscommunication much. I think we're all pretty trained to slow down and just listen and to look at it from a couple of different perspectives and, really work our own skills, right? We're going, okay, oh, there's tension in my body. Wait, did I just let an email take over my shoulders? Like, when I talk about the art of showing up, for me, it's, I better not go try to teach a class while that email has a hold of my shoulders, because that's the presence I'm going to bring. And then we're all going to be Maximus in that room. I'm serious, right? And that's what happens. And people don't realize they're doing it. I mean, think about on the world stage, leadership. To me, this is what leadership is, right? The math. All right, I'm going to go here for a second, but the math of the emotion of, say, Trump, right? Him being upset about something and spreading that rage across, right? Not just across a certain constituency, but across everybody, right? Whether they're like, yes, I believe you, you're right, like, this is the problem. Or if you're like, rawr, like, he's got everybody's body engaged because his body is engaged. And I don't know who's doing it in the background for him, right? Like, to me, there's like, the only person who can interrupt that is the person who has the capacity to notice themselves doing it, and to either have people around them who are kind enough and who they've agreed to let say, slow down, right? Like, it sounds like Cheryline is your person who's like, all right, slow down a second. Legal is very, very expensive. Speaking of the math of emotions, I literally, speaking of, here's a story. I one time had a client, breach contract. She basically in the middle of the contract said, I can't afford to do this. And, it was clear that I had not gathered enough information on the front end to know. I thought she had actually had seed money. Then she knew it was going to take this much time. We had that conversation, but whatever. She came and she said, I can't do this anymore. And I don't know what to do. And then she was upset, and it was clear she was upset, right? She liked me. She wanted to continue the work, and she was upset that she couldn't. But in her upset, she started to go, well, do you really think that what we've done up until now has actually been worth it? And right? And I had a moment where I started to I could feel it, right? I could feel her bristle, and I started to bristle. And I was like, wait a second, this is another human being who's upset. And so I just I just dropped back into my body in the moment. I said, okay, look, here's the deal. I know that you're upset about not being able to do this, but we're not going to discount the work that you've already done. You've done a lot of great work. We're going to, right. And so we had great conversation. I had already given her some compensation. She paid back what she kind of owed already. And she was like, I want to work with you in the future. But here's what it could have cost. If she had been upset and I had been upset and I had let that, I could have hired a lawyer to say, breach of contract, you owe me the rest of this money. It would have cost us both countless hours in legal fees. It would have cost us both way more headache, way more time, way more stress, way more everything. It would have spread to all of our families, right? Not to mention the figuring out of things. And and in the end, over what? I mean, it was a reasonable chunk of money, but so for me, that's where that math is. I know, right? When I used to go into companies that were okay, you got a bunch of Title IX stuff going on. It's because you guys aren't dealing with people's emotions effectively. Legal is downstream of people's emotions always. Nobody gives a shit about the contract until there's a disagreement.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with this. And I love that you mentioned how you realized you didn't do enough work on the beginning end of the conversation when you were essentially vetting, because that's Cheryl Ann and I say all the time, learning a lesson, because we take these experiences once it's kind of settled down, and we're like, how can we improve on our end so that there isn't a miscommunication, so everybody understands. And my business has transitioned so much since it started because of those learning lessons, because I know that not everybody communicates the same way. Some people need an outline of their project and their dates. I communicate with my clients every week. You all know I send that weekly Monday email. Y'all are getting it whether you want it or not. But some people need more in that communication email that I send weekly. So having those disagreements or those kind of hiccups, I guess what you do with it turns the math of emotion into more money in your pocket if you do the right thing with it.
Totally. And so this is where we always say, that to me, the symptom is the teacher always. Right. So the upset, the conflict, the whatever, it's how movement happens, right? Friction is actually great. It's how cars run on roads, right? If they didn't have friction, they just slide. They wouldn't do anything, right? You got to have friction for things to actually move. The question is it effective friction, or is it simply internal tension that hasn't been transformed? And how long does it get stuck? Right? How long are you stuck trying to get out of that rut, just spinning the wheels before you actually get traction, not just friction? And so for me, that's the question is how quickly can we really pay attention to the teacher? In that moment, it was right there on the call, right? Because if it hadn't happened on the call, it would have taken a lot of extra layers and time and whatever else, right? And it might not have gotten transformed, but because it was right there in the moment, and I shifted my own physical body, right, in order to actually maintain rapport with the other humanimals, is what I sometimes call us, right? The other humanimal body there, to go, it's okay, you're safe. I'm not going to this isn't a fight, right? I know you're upset, but that doesn't mean I'm going to engage in a fight here. And also, you know, for me, there's also the value of recognizing what, like, for the sake of what? My value system, the legal system is inherently inequitable. So regardless of what happens, whoever has the most money essentially is going to end up with the upper hand, or, you know, in most cases. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of math floating around in here.
You were talking about teachers, and Missy had mentioned how you and she went to high school. So, Missy, when Jade was like, "Bye, bitches," what what was your high school experience?
Well, first of all, I was not happy that she was like, bye, bitches. Let's start there. And this was back before there was, you know, like Facebook and stuff. So like we actually wrote letters to each other.
That is the sweetest thing ever.
I know.
You guys are the same age, so yes. Like
I
there
have-
was no social media connection.
No,
I still have some of those letters.
I found one recently too, and it was pretty incredible. And she talks the same way she did then too. That's just great.
She talks about friction and down to get the friction on.
The whole letter it was talking about the artist formerly known as Prince, and some kind of laws, and like literally. And she was giving me relationship advice at the same time, so it was all on keel, perfect. So well, when she and I went to the same high school, and it was like an experimental high school, and until we were, I don't know, juniors or something, you couldn't fail. You could, if you got below a C on something, you would get an incomplete. So it wasn't failing, you would just get an incomplete. So fine, whatever, who cares? Incomplete, incomplete. Well, turns out a few months before graduation, I find out that I'm one credit short of getting a certificate of merit. And, you know, I'm like, well, it's one credit. Like, you got to be kidding me. So it turns out that I have to take an earth science credit, and I'm upset about it. I have to go back and take earth science. I ended up having to take maybe like 2 tests or something. Like, it wasn't a lot that I had to do. It really wasn't. But it's something that I still think about. But I did do it, and I do have a certificate of merit.
Get that certificate of merit. Yes, queen. Yes.
I love it.
But I do want to say, I think it's a beautiful thing, because I think that the math of emotions is not just, you know, cost, but it's also investment. And your friendship all those years ago was such an investment. Like, who would have first saw that Jade would have created this company, that Missy would be helping spearhead this company, that the success of this company would be on both of your backs when you were just in an experimental high school. So not only is it just like calculating the risks and the money that's coming in or the money that's coming out, but it's also investing who you're associating with, and who you're, I don't want to say hype up, but who you're bringing up with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wanted to be an acupuncturist too, until I found out you had to touch people. And I was like, oh, wait, I don't like touching people.
But how many people say, once I found my people, my business thrived?
Mm-hmm.
Versus when I had the wrong hires, it was just constant problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right. The flip side of the cost of emotions is that actually, I was actually saying this to a client earlier today, that when you actually start to know and really trust your own, some people will call this instincts. I don't love this word, because to me, instincts are the minor phenomena that we haven't pulled apart to actually know what's actually happening, to actually see what's real, right? Or like another way of saying this is, magic only is like a very tiny repetition until it looks invisible, right? And then we call it magic. And intuition, I think, is very similar. So I was saying to a client earlier today, right? She knows who her best clients are, and she sniffs them. We all sniff them out, right? We're like, these are my people. Like, how do you know these are your people? Oh, because there's certain thing that happens in my, right, in their presence. And then I go, oh, okay. You have to learn to like what that is so that everybody on your team can learn it too. So you don't end up being the only salesperson in your company forever. But the fact is you're kind of using your instinct and that emotional body of going, yep, this is going to work. This isn't going to work. Right. And we actually used to do this using sense, right? You can smell a good deal, right? Or something like that. Or handshakes, right? Because you could actually kind of like lean in and kind of like, you can smell fear on the other person or not. And so there's some understanding of like, we've always done, relationship has always been how we've done business in a lot of ways. And it's important because it's actually, there is no, I always think economy, I always say economy is just the agreements that people make with each other, right? It's successful agreements that people make with each other or not. And so, right. And a business is just a small economy. And to be fair, I think we've actually leaned a little too hard sometimes on thinking that we can make data points without accounting for the math of the emotional body, without accounting for the human body that actually goes, there's something that works with this person. I'm not sure how come yet, even if they don't already have the skill set that we think that they need. How do we actually look at what it is that they do have and what it is that we're seeing and what it is that we're looking at to, if we're talking about employment or whatever else.
So how do you feel about the phrase that's everywhere right now? It's like the 2022, 2023 phrase, red flags.
I mean, I think they're like they're like wisdom teachers, right? I think they're just symptoms as teachers but I think it can be an oversimplification, right? Because is the person, I think we use it for people sometimes, right? When I look around, I'm like, oh, they are a red flag. I'm like, no, they are not a red flag. Something about what they're doing doesn't work for you, right?
I love that.
And it's also a lot of times it's a question of, right? I think we've turned a little bit so much into, right? I have a love-hate relationship with modern psychology, right? I think allopathic psychology, I'll call it, because it's not the only psychology that exists. But that I think we sort of go, oh, well, they're right. There's a red flag or they're a narcissist or right. We're very quick to like label people and things and without getting to the nuance of what am I actually seeing? Oh, they keep requesting time on my calendar. And it turns out there's also usually a teaching symptom for me in there too. Oh, turns out I'm not great about boundaries or just declining and saying, you know what, I love you, don't want to be friends with you, but I'm going to love you from 3 states away, right? I don't want to live with you anymore and I don't want to do that thing, but right, like that just, and for me, it's like, is it a red flag or is it a teaching symptom for me to be clearer and clearer about who I am in the world and what I am looking for so that, because otherwise I'm going to spend my life looking at red flags. I want to see green flags, to be fair. So I need to just attune my body so that I'm stop remediating so much and look towards like, what is it that we're growing? What are we intended to grow here?
Missy, what do you think about red flags?
So being a newly single person and trying to figure out like this whole dating thing and like that whole thing, I feel like I'm really in tune to red flags, but like on that kind of level is a different level than what you're talking about, but it's kind of the same thing, right? It's so I feel like I'm going by red flags a lot more than I used to, but only because of that. That's interesting. I never thought about it before. But I also try to remember when someone does something that I don't like or that I think is horrible or wrong. Something that Jade says is that everyone is doing the best they can with what they have. And it's something that I try to remember when somebody says something that like, they're not always necessarily trying to think of the worst thing that they can say to upset me, right? They're saying something that they think is meaningful or is going to help someone else, right? So lately I've been trying to think that people are doing the best with what they have and trying to see the positive side of anything. Although The beards and the guns in the profile pictures are 100% a red flag. Long beards, not short beards. Just in case.
It's such an interesting, for me, there's like, it's recognizing that like, we all have like red flags essentially are like our wisdom rubrics, right? They're like, oh, like for me, I don't know, but I see American flags in your yard. Like what's funny is I'm always shocked when I see an American flag in a yard and then I see like a black veteran come out or something. And I'm like, oh, okay. Not who I thought was going to live there. Right. And I realized like, oh, I have these rubrics that I have developed, right? Biases, all of the prejudices, right? And all of these things kind of fall in the same place. And I think red flags are like, what does it point? If I can see what it's actually pointing to, like, what is that phenomena? What's actually happening? Oh, I don't really want to mess around with somebody who's got guns and, guns and what? Guns and flags and beards. Is that what it
Long
is?
beards. Long Duck Dynasty style beards. No, thank you.
Which is funny because Jade, when you were talking about American flags like in someone's yard, I have the same reaction. However, when somebody has like a rainbow flag, I'm like, yes. Or like a
Yes.
black
green, right? Green flags. We can move to. We do this. I mean, we do this. Sometimes we drive around and we're like, okay, could we move to that neighborhood? Can we move to that neighborhood with our big black kids? Probably not. Oh, wait, I see a rainbow flag. I see it all, all people welcome or like, sanctuary sign or right. We see enough of that kind of stuff. Then we're like, maybe, could, possibly.
Which is bringing in our own biases because somebody could have an American flag and be the most nicest, altruistic BLM protest. Like, I just don't know who's residing in that house. And somebody can have another flag and they could be like Jeffrey Dahmer's predecessor. Like,
right.
So clearly we are bringing in what that represents to us, which is not giving the person who has that an opportunity to even, I don't want to say defend themselves because they don't have to defend themselves to me, but share why they have that or even be willing to share why they have that. And I think that like not giving people the benefit of the doubt, what I'm realizing as I get older, is very much an emotional cost to me, but also an emotional cost to them because they're not feeling heard or understood. And I feel like that as we get older, we learn to, if you're working on yourself, you learn to allow people to be vulnerable with you and not use that to either attack them, but use that to understand them more, which is giving them more.
This is why I like the language of body sensations, because I can recognize, I don't think we all have biases, like literally the way we perceive the world, the way we make meaning in the world is based on our own history, lived experience, all of that. Right. And so that's going to happen, like it or not. Question is, do I recognize when it's happening so that I can go, oh, I see a flag. I notice there's like little sensation in my belly. I wonder what story I'm making up, right? Which then leads me to at least being open to, if there's an actual human being who shows up in front of me in that yard, I can go, hey, I'd like to, I'm curious, tell me about your flag, right? Because I can then unhook my story by actually being curious about their story, which actually is where the bridges begin to, right? That's where we can, I don't even know that we need bridges between, right? But at least we can look into the chasm together between us and see, oh, what is between us? What is keeping us apart? And at least we can know more about what's happening in there. Which to me is sort of this is the flip side of the cost of emotions, is that when we're really attuned, and this is how come I'm so rigorous about the body sensations, is that I can go, oh, I notice a little queasiness in my tummy. I can respond to that email and go, I noticed when I read these words, I felt a little something. I don't even know if I'm interpreting this the way you meant it, right? Because the language even is not the same, right? vulnerability. I don't know what that means to you, right? So all red flags, I don't know what that means to you. Like, I don't even know what, like, what is it even, what are we even talking about, But that's how we begin to bridge it, is that I think, the language of like, oh, here's my sensation can begin to bridge that divide across a lot of cultural, expectations and norms.
It's so true. And what Missy brought up earlier with social media, tone is so different now. And the generation after us and the generation after that, their tones are so different because they grew up with texting, and I feel like if I was to text my mom something, her interpretation of that tone would be very different than if I were to text my best friend, because of
Mm.
my mom's 81. So she'd be like, what does this mean? And my bestie would be like, mm-hmm. So tone is very, do you think that tone is getting lost because of the way that people communicate now on, I guess, machine?
I don't think I even know what you mean by tone, right? For me, I look for like patterns or ways of communicating that maybe aren't necessarily clear across, but I don't think I know necessarily what you even mean by tone.
Like so if I'm exasperated, there's a tone in my voice.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I'm coming from a place of questioning, of wanting to learn more, there's a tone in my voice. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
mad, there's a tone in my voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that those tones are very hard to come across in like emails and text messages, and I think that that's where a lot of people miscommunication can arise.
Uh, oh, I'm always impressed that roads even meet between counties, because I don't know how we get anything done just because even just regular language. No, really regular language, right? This idea of I know what you're talking about, you say this and I mean that, unless we're talking literally in math terms, a lot of us don't even share the same language. So I assume whatever somebody's tone sounds like, I'm making an assumption based on on my perceived and lived experiences. So I have no idea what they actually mean. Somebody could be cold and they're shivering and they're talking to me and I'm like, what are you scared of? I'm not biting you, right? But they're just like, and but the expectation that I think I know what their tone is or why it is or all of that, that to me is like, that is the dangerous edge of not paying attention to. I can say, oh, okay, when you said that, here's what I noticed in my system. Is that what you meant? And then I can ask a question about it, right? But and actually, tone is fascinating because I've got teenagers and all their friends and whoever else, and I think they're just as astute about tone as anybody else ever has been. They just use different mediums to deliver it. Maybe I don't know. Yeah.
Do you have homework for Missy and I this week?
Okay. You guys still got your reminders somewhere? You got a reminder? Is it still distracting you enough that when there is a husband who's hobbling and another family member who needs or you're the one hobbling, or you're right and your animals are antsy, is it still enough to distract you for 1 second in the midst of that?
I have to do a new one today.
Okay. How about you,
Yeah,
Bethany?
I think I've become acclimated to it.
Yep, it will become wallpaper. This is the thing about little habits, is that, right, we start to see them and then suddenly we don't see them anymore because we got used to it. I mean, this is like the beauty of humans, is that we're so adaptable. And also the flip side is the danger of humans is that we're so adaptable. So pick something new, right? A jangly bracelet will work, or a shiny ring that you have to take off and on every time you wash your hands, or right, something. Maybe a different color on your fingernail or a different finger. And when you see it this week, I want you to, it's interesting because it's the math of emotion. So I want you to actually look and go, how how much time did I spend with this teaching symptom, emotional teacher, so to speak? And what did I intend to do with my day? What could I have done with it? Or what might I have been doing if I hadn't been doing that? And just play with and here's the thing. How many times did you guys notice your reminders last week? Like how many times a day?
I would say once a day.
Okay.
It
You need a
wasn't
stronger reminder.
6 or 7.
Okay.
a day.
Yeah.
What did you have on your finger?
I had a tattoo. I have a temporary tattoo on my arm, and I'm going to send you some, Bethany, so you have some too.
I'm so excited to be tatted. And if anybody is listening, if you want to be tatted as well, let Missy and Jade know. Let's all be tatted.
Yes. Yeah. We love this. We love this. So yeah. So, but you need a stronger reminder, something that actually like disrupts your visual field, right? Like for me, I never paint my nails. So but the gold wouldn't have done it. But the green was like, I literally got out of my car and I was like, that's the point though, is that it needs to be something that makes you go like, what? Oh, so we tried turning your watch upside down. We're gonna have to figure out
When we
what are the
first
things
started,
that-
I turned my watch upside down and it literally drove me crazy. I couldn't handle it. Like I was trying to read it upside down, not getting the fact that had it upside down for a reason. So I had to turn it back and do something else.
I wonder if it would work for you now that you're more acclimated to interrupting yourself as many times a day. No?
Maybe. I don't know. I think I still try to read it upside down.
I mean, I do read mine upside down, but I also, because it's upside down and that takes me a second, that's actually my main reminders. My watch is upside down. So takes me a second and then I go, all right, what's my practice, right? Like, am I currently practicing reframing or noticing phenomena? So anyway, so your practice this week is going to be to notice the cost of emotions, right? What is costing you? What are you not seeing that because you're caught in some frustration or irritability or whatever it is? Just check in as many times a day as this thing will disrupt you. Okay.
I love that. And
Yes,
what
ma'am.
about next week? What are we doing next week?
Oh, and listeners, if you are watching, you do this too. Do the homework with us and put some comments in the YouTube or on a podcast when it comes out.
Or you can email us.
Email us. We are jade@humaningwell.com and missy@humaningwell.com. So you can go ahead and email us. We love to hear actually if you're practicing along with us and what you're noticing, because I actually do these calculations in my head. I did it once I was talking to a contractor with us. She was talking about like getting an email, being flustered, and how long it took her. And I just did the math in my head and I was like, that's $15,000 that you just lost. And she was like, I know. But seriously, right? If you just do the actual basic math, not to mention dinner with her kids and whatever else was missing and that got lost in the sauce too. Anyway, do the math with us, play with us. Next week, I will be away. We will not be meeting here next Thursday, but we will be back the week after. So that is February 2nd. Is that right? Somebody say this correctly. Yes, February 2nd, we will be back here with our next podcast, and we will be talking about intuition, right? So we kind of talked about intuition and instinct. We kind of alluded to it and what it really is sort of made up of. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that. All righty. See you guys next time. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everyone. Okay.